Do you know how many women exhaust themselves trying to be everything he wants, without realizing that her energy alone, when grounded in its true feminine essence, is what awakens his deepest desire? Stay with me until the end of this video, because what you'll learn may change not just the way you attract a man, but the way you remember your own power. She doesn't need to seduce. She doesn't need to perform. When a woman is anchored in her feminine energy, not the scripted, curated femininity the world sells her, but the ancient, magnetic, unshakable force that flows from her very being, he feels it. Not with his eyes, not even with his body first, but with something older than logic. His unconscious. The part of him that remembers, on a soul level, what it means to be drawn into something greater than conquest. You don't have to speak louder to be heard by a man's soul. You only have to drop into yourself. Because the feminine that triggers a man's deepest desire isn't the one who tries to match his pace. It's the one who slows time with her presence. And Jung understood this. He understood that the feminine, when whole, when undistorted, activates something sleeping in the male psyche. It's not lust, it's longing. Not for ownership, but for union. But here's what most never see coming. That longing is terrifying, because it dismantles the games, the power plays, the surface-level hunger for attention. It goes beneath all that, into the dark, into the myth, into the places he never expected anyone to touch. Feminine energy, when pure, when still, is not soft. It is seismic. She may not say much, but he will feel it. The way she's not performing, not reaching, not needing. The way her joy is self-sourced. The way she listens with her whole body but doesn't absorb. The way she looks at him without asking to be chosen. That look, that energy, it haunts him. Because it doesn't beg. It remembers. It reminds him of something he lost when he chose control over connection. When he learned to climb instead of descend. When he learned to chase rather than receive. And suddenly, he wants to descend. He wants to slow down. He wants to open. But he doesn't know why. He just knows her presence feels like something he forgot he was seeking. Not in a romantic fairy tale kind of way, but in a Jungian, soul-level, Anima kind of way. She awakens his inner feminine, his depth, his eros, his ache for meaning. She is not just a woman. She is a mirror of his own becoming. And this is why feminine energy, true feminine energy, doesn't need to scream. It whispers, and its whisper echoes longer than the loudest performance. You, woman watching this, have to understand. It's not about becoming what he wants. It's about remembering what you are when you're not trying to be wanted. Because the moment you do that, the moment you shift from external to internal, from efforting to emanating, you become undeniable. And the men who are still living on the surface, they won't understand it. They'll feel you and call it mystery. They'll try to name it, tame it, label it. But the man who's ready, the man who's begun his own descent into the soul, he will recognize it. Not just as something he wants, but as something he's been missing in himself. That's when the desire turns from fleeting to eternal. Not because you played a role, but because you remembered the script was always written in your blood. She doesn't chase. She draws. She doesn't pull him in with her hands. She draws him in with her gravity. A kind of stillness that moves mountains. A silence that speaks louder than approval. And he is left breathless, not because she performed, but because she didn't need to. That's what unnerves him. That's what ignites him. You see, he's used to the noise, the competition, the reward systems built on validation. But your energy doesn't play in that arena. You don't seduce with strategy. You seduce with sovereignty. And it's that sovereignty, that subtle assurance in your own being, that makes his soul lean in, even when his ego tries to pull away. Carl Jung would say, the feminine does not push the masculine to become. It invites him to shed the armor, to step into awareness, to confront the boy within the man, and offer him something no other woman ever did. The space to be known without fixing. When you are in your feminine energy, your very presence becomes an offering. Not an offering of submission, but of essence. You become less of a woman he wants to possess, and more of a portal he wants to lose himself inside. And it isn't loud. It's never loud. It's in the way you breathe when you're listening to your body. It's in the way your gaze doesn't flinch in the face of discomfort. It's in the way your hands stay open, but never beg. And most of all, it's in the way you don't try to explain your value. Because the woman who knows her value doesn't explain, it radiates. He may not understand it at first. He may resist. He may even test you, because his unconscious doesn't trust what doesn't fit inside the old template. But something in him knows, this isn't just attraction. This is confrontation with himself, with what he's avoided, with what he's disowned. And that's why desire deepens. It's no longer just about wanting your body. It's about wanting to be worthy of entering your field. He starts to notice the difference between excitement and resonance, between attention and devotion, between a woman who demands his best and a woman who makes him want to offer it. You didn't demand it. You didn't even ask. You just were. And that being, that relaxed, embodied, untouchable yet open way of existing, breaks something in him. Not in pain, in memory, because he remembers the feminine as it once was, before it was diluted, before it was silenced, before it was sold. He remembers it from dreams, from myths, from the eyes of the first woman who ever held him and maybe didn't stay. He remembers it, not as a woman, but as a home. That's the true trigger of his desire, the recognition of something ancient. Not the chase, not the conquest, the return. And suddenly, he is no longer the man who wants to conquer the world to feel powerful. He wants to sit beside you and feel your presence, feel his own breath, feel the ache of having searched for you in all the wrong places. And now that he's found you, not in your performance, but in your presence, he is afraid. Afraid that he is not enough. Afraid that you'll see him too clearly. But more than anything, afraid that you'll vanish if he doesn't rise. Because your feminine energy doesn't just invite his desire. It demands his becoming. And becoming is no easy thing. It's not a crown. It's a crucible. And this is the secret power of your feminine energy. It doesn't seduce his ego. It undoes it. Not by force, not by words, but by being a field too honest, too deep, too sacred for anything shallow to survive. He starts to feel his old patterns crumble. The games don't work. The silence isn't safe anymore. The charm that once won over a room suddenly feels like noise. Because in front of your stillness, he begins to see what he's avoided. The little boy who performs for love, the man who hides in achievement, the mask that no longer fits, and even if he resists it on the surface, his soul is already unraveling. And you do nothing but remain, still, vast, unmoved by his tests, unbothered by his push and pull. Because your power isn't in what you do, it's in what you don't react to. That's what draws him closer. That's what haunts him when he tries to leave. He begins to crave your presence not as a possession, but as a reflection. He wants to know what you see in him that makes you so unshaken. He wants to understand how you can be so open and yet so sovereign. How your softness doesn't collapse into his chaos, but holds it like a mountain holds the sky. Carl Jung taught that in every man's unconscious is the Anima, the feminine soul image that completes him. But few men ever encounter her in waking life. Most project her onto women who can't carry her. Others run from her entirely, terrified of what she stirs. But the man who's ready, the man who has tasted enough of the world to know it, will never fill the hole. He finds you, not just as a woman, but as the living mirror of his own soul's hunger. And that's when the deepest desire begins. Not for your body, though he aches for that too. Not for your mind, though he's in awe of it. But for your witnessing. The way you look at him and don't flinch. The way you feel him without trying to fix him. The way you honor your own rhythm and make space for his without absorbing his fear. You don't need to be loud to hold him. You don't need to lead to guide him. You don't need to prove to earn him. You simply are. And that being triggers something no performance ever could. His yearning to rise. Not for your approval, not for your affection, but for the feeling he gets when he's around you, like the man he always wanted to become is finally within reach. And here's the truth most won't tell you. It's not about making him love you. It's about becoming so in love with your own essence, so rooted in your own knowing, that the men who enter your orbit are changed simply by your presence. Some will run, some will shrink, some will try to dominate or distract. But the one who's ready, he'll lean in, he'll tremble, and he'll stay. Not because he's sure, but because your energy has become the only place where his soul can breathe. And in that breath, something awakens, a truth he can no longer ignore. That what you offer is not convenience, but consequence. To love you is to unravel. To stand near you is to feel exposed. Not because you demand vulnerability, but because you live in it. Because you don't fear the dark. You hold it. This is the quiet revolution of feminine energy. It doesn't ask for dominance. It doesn't compete. It simply includes. Your softness isn't passivity, it's alchemy. You take in what's broken, and through your presence, through your listening, through your truth, you reveal it tenderly, ruthlessly, without ever raising your voice. And he can't unsee it. You stir not only his desire, but his shame. The parts of himself he's denied, the parts of him that feel too weak, too wild, too wounded. And at first, he might push back, because it's easier to chase excitement than to sit with exposure. But deep down, he knows this woman is different. She is not trying to please me. She is not here to make me feel powerful. She is here because she already is, and she invites me to meet her there. Not in fantasy, in truth. And so desire becomes devotion, not the kind that clings, but the kind that grounds. The kind that doesn't say, I need you, but I recognize you. The kind that doesn't ask for possession, but presence. It's the kind of desire that burns through everything that isn't real. Because when a woman lives in her feminine energy, she doesn't seduce to be chosen. She radiates because she has already chosen herself. That's what he feels. That's what he's drawn to. Not your beauty, though it's undeniable. Not your voice, though it lingers. Not your body, though it calls to him. But your choice. The fact that you do not need him to fill a void. That you are not reaching toward him from emptiness, but from fullness. And that fullness, it terrifies and enchants him, because he has spent his life being the answer to a woman's longing. But you are not longing. You are whole. And a whole woman doesn't inspire addiction. She inspires ascension. You don't soothe his wounds. You show him where they are. You don't protect his ego. You press against it until it cracks. You don't make him feel like a king. You invite him to become one, not through your worship, but through your witnessing. And that witnessing, it's the most dangerous, most sacred gift a woman can give. It doesn't say, I will love you when you change. It says, I see who you are beneath the mask, and I will not look away. But you also will not wait. Because the woman who knows how to hold a man's soul also knows when it's time to walk away from his shadow. And that's what deepens the desire. Not just the way you come close, but the way you can leave with grace, with dignity, without begging him to rise. Because your love is an offering, not a guarantee. And if he's not ready to step into it, you don't collapse. You glow. Because the woman who glows doesn't chase, doesn't plead, doesn't dim her light to be more palatable. She doesn't water herself down so he can swallow her. She doesn't explain her intensity or apologize for her magic. She simply is, and her very being becomes a mirror. Not a mirror for his ego, but a mirror for his potential. And when he finally sees it, when he finally feels what it's like to be in the presence of someone who wants nothing from him but his truth, he either ascends or he disappears. Some men will walk away, and you must let them, because the feminine is not here to convince. She is here to call. She is here to remind the world what it means to feel again. She is the force beneath the waves, the breath between the noise, the gaze that pierces without a word. And when she knows who she is, when she truly remembers, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she tried to be, but because she became inevitable. She no longer waits to be chosen. She chooses peace over proving, stillness over strategy, truth over performance. And that is what stirs him. Not just lust, but reverence. Not just attraction, but transformation. He may not know why her energy stays with him long after her voice is gone, long after her scent fades from his memory, but his soul remembers. Because her energy didn't just touch his skin. It touched his story. It awakened something he hadn't dared name. And for the man who is ready, that awakening becomes a path. Not toward her approval, but toward his integration. Because feminine energy, when whole, does not complete a man. It awakens him to the parts he must reclaim himself. and she knows this. So she doesn't reach, she doesn't teach, she doesn't try to heal what isn't ready. She simply stays rooted in her own rhythm. And that rhythm, it is the song his soul has been aching to hear all his life. Not because she sings it for him, but because she sings it for herself. And from that sacred place of fullness, she attracts not boys looking for mothers, but men willing to become kings. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. If this truth stirred something deep inside you, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe for more soul-rooted wisdom grounded in psychology, empowerment, and the forgotten feminine.